Some game series are unfortunately left behind, and I can think of many that are sorely missed, but for Middle-earth fans, there's nothing more mourned than the Shadow series. The Shadow games were the peak of 3D Middle-earth, and were left behind without a third game, even though one was seemingly being set up. Today we're going to look at how Monolith set up the possibility of a third game, what could have been, and why it never came to pass, along with my own opinion on how the story should have gone.
Take him to Mordor.
Goodbye. Say goodbye to the knife that you sharpen with your life. Say goodbye to the dark side.
Greetings, fellow Gravewalkers, and welcome back to another video. Monolith Productions left Shadow of War on quite the cliffhanger at the end of Blade of Galadriel, with Celebrimbor being free from Sauron as the One Ring was destroyed. It also saw the death of Talion and his passing on to the death he was promised from the start. This ending also featured Altariel seemingly suggesting that she was going to hunt down the Ringmaker for better or for worse.
She witnessed the fall of Barad-dûr and the escape of Celebrimbor.
The Ringmaker is free. He calls to you. I will follow his call.
This made it seem like a third game was in the works that would focus on Altariel as the character we play as, especially with how much work was put into the Blade of Galadriel DLC and its overhaul of the skills menu to incorporate all of the power Galadriel's assassin had. This seems to be where a cutoff happens. Most people were expecting the reveal of a third game by 2020, since there was a 3-year gap between Shadow of Mordor and Shadow of War, but a reveal never came. As we all know, Monolith wouldn't release another game after Shadow of War, and was sadly shut down in 2025. Leaving us all wondering, was a third game ever in the works? Monolith was focusing on a Wonder Woman game for many years before their shutdown, so was a third game ever in the plans, and if so, why would it never be heard of? I suspect Monolith did in fact plan on doing a third Shadow game with Altariel as the main character, but was leaned off doing it when fans didn't really resonate with her character. And I think there is quite a lot to talk about that when it comes to players not really enjoying Altariel that I will talk about now. To start, I don't hate the idea of Altariel, and I don't think anyone dislikes the concept. The problem more so lies in the execution was done poorly. Altariel being an assassin of Galadriel, and that being her reason for being in Mordor, is believable and even cool. Galadriel knows that the shadows are coalescing after the Hobbit, so sending a highly skilled warrior to hold back the Nazgul makes complete sense. The devil is in how she acts. Altariel is overly hostile to Talion, which from a setting perspective doesn't really make sense. She's seen the Gravewalker fighting against Sauron for a while now, and she still doesn't trust him. More than that, she seems to trust Celebrimbor more by the end when she takes the new ring. This all seems very backwards and isn't a really good way of making people happy about playing as her. Altariel is actively a thorn in Talion's side story-wise, since she opposes using the orcs, and worst of all, we learn so little about her that it's a wonder why Monolith even thought she was interesting enough to play as. If Monolith had fleshed her out, given her a proper and real backstory that explained her hostility, and not had her be a total traitor, I think people would have been more open to liking her. And I think that last part is a really big deal. Why would I want to play as the person that betrayed the character we've known and liked through 2 full games? They don't give a compelling explanation for her siding with Kel. She just does. If there had been hints of the Ringmaker speaking to her or whispering lies in her ear to make her think it was the only way, then it would make so much more sense. Celebrimbor manipulated Talion. It's crazy to believe he wouldn't have done so again, and that headcanon alone makes Altariel less hateable and more sympathetic. A kind of similarity between Talion and Altariel like that would make their interactions in Blade of Galadriel more compelling, instead of it feeling like she's faking sympathy for Talion. In the end, they make it seem like Eltariel really does feel bad for what Talion has become, and it's important to remember that she's a catalyst for it. She took the new ring, which forced Talion to take Isildur's. All in all, I think the reason we never got to see a third Shadow game is down to the fact people were just very torn about the prospective new protagonist. There's very real and well-written ideas that could have been formed for her character, and with a voice actress like Laura Bailey, there's plenty of talent there. All Monolith had to do was decide on how they wanted their new character to act, and in the end, WB wanted a Wonder Woman game over a third entry in a years-old duology. Moving on to what could have been, I really believe that there's two paths they could have taken. A game where you play as a better Eltariel that was lied to by Celebrimbor and is actually remorseful over what she caused Talion, or a game where Talion is brought back because Eltariel has fallen further than he ever did. The first idea I'm putting forth is what I believe Monolith would have wanted to do in concept with my own additions. With Talion dead and Celebrimbor free, Eltariel now has to navigate a very different Mordor, one now feeling the pressure of a restored Gondor and the lack of its lord. She climbs Mount Doom to where she had seen Celebrimbor wisp off to and finds the body of Talion and the now free Wraith. Celebrimbor takes Isildur's ring and disappears, leaving Eltariel with a new goal: defeat the Ringmaker. It isn't long before Celebrimbor returns the Nazgul, and while some side with him, the Witch King, Helm, Salutin, and Khamûl do not. With the former Ringwraiths split, the Witch King, Celebrimbor, and Eltariel settle into a war of attrition. Eltariel would have to seek out former followers of Talion and attempt to pull them to her side. At some point, Celebrimbor would overpower the Witch King and do what the Black Hand did all those years ago: absorb the Lord of the Nazgul and become more powerful. A bright version of Sauron. Eltariel would then face down the Bright Lord of Mordor with Ratbag, Ranger, Akoth, the Bow of Morgoth, the remaining twin, and Maku the Fixer. After battling shades of Bruise and his warband, the remaining Nazgul, and completely destroying them, and whatever new overlord Celebrimbor would appoint, they would come face to face with him in his new Barad-dûr. After a long, hard-fought battle, the Bright Lord would be struck down, and Celebrimbor would be completely destroyed. The Witch King would be killed as well, and Eltariel would tell the remaining orcs to head east and attempt to carve out a home for them separate from the Lords of Mordor, while she returns west, leaving the Land of Shadow and finding her way to the Grey Havens with the rest of the elves. That idea is what I think Monolith would have wanted with some of my own additions, and there's some concepts that apply to both that I skipped over for now, so we can talk about after we've talked about my ideas for a sequel. So, here is my idea for a sequel plotline. In the fire and ash of Mount Doom, Talion would awaken, ripped from his peaceful death and afterlife, and greeted by the cause of all his pain. Celebrimbor would tell Talion that not only has Eltariel been corrupted, but the Witch King has been brought back. The Witch King doesn't swear loyalty to her and takes his entourage with him back to Minas Morgul, leading to a war for Mordor. Kel brings Talion back to put an end to the Witch King and bring Eltariel back from over the edge, or in the case that fails, eliminate her. Talion rightfully doesn't trust the Ringmaker, and it would be very evident that he has changed a lot since we last saw him. The darkness of Mordor has taken its toll, and he is dead set on the destruction of the Witch King. As the war pans out, Talion will have to find his former followers like Akoth, Ratbag, and Ranger, taking them to the forefront of this three-way battle. Eventually, they manage to raid Eltariel's new stronghold and defeat her. There's two things that could happen here. Either they manage to pull her back, or she falls in battle. If she dies, they reclaim the new ring and embark against the Witch King. If she lives, she returns the new ring and joins Talion on their march against the Witch King. After a long war, they finally make it to Minas Morgul, where they strike down each of the Nazgul and eventually bring down the Witch King. But just as victory is close, Celebrimbor plays the cards up his sleeve and betrays everyone, stealing the Wraith Lord's ring and leaving to take over the crumbled remains of Barad-dûr. Talion is left with a new ring, however, and mounts his siege against the new Lord of Mordor. After another few missions, Celebrimbor would be permanently killed, and Talion would be left to choose between removing the new ring and dying again, or keeping it and trying to build a new life, bringing his orcs east. That ends my idea for a game that revives Talion, and now we'll talk about what would be the same between both plots. Both Talion and Altariel have to go after orcs that formerly worked for them, and I'd imagine those like Ratbag, Ranger, Akoth, etc. would have joined the outlaw tribe and continued to fight against Sauron. I also imagine that Baranor and Idril would reappear at some point, though a lot older, and maybe a remnant of Shelob, but since she's dead, I'm hesitant on that one. The map of Shadow of War would be fully explorable, including Udun, the Black Gate, and all of the points of interest that are on the map, but inaccessible. And I'd imagine a mission or two would bring you to Gondor proper, and maybe even east at some point. This would be a culmination of everything we'd seen before, with a whole lot of new stuff, and changes to the Nemesis system to allow orcs to interact with each other far more than seen before. I believe we could have seen orcs actually build real rivalries and grow to hate or respect each other, leading to a truly living world. I could also see Monolith taking this third game in a more open world direction. Not fully open world like Skyrim or Red Dead Redemption, just larger regions than Shadow of War had. I'm also guessing some people are wondering why I said Altariel could be corrupted. Well, it's this skin in Shadow of War that has a Dark Ranger Talion look to it that features text from Galadriel about continuing to use the new ring, making me believe this could have been a teaser for things to come at one point before creative meddling from WB became a thing. So, were we ever going to get a third Shadow game? Who knows? We probably were, but then a perfect storm led to Monolith never getting to release another game. And I will forever mourn that. But before we end this video, I would say that if you are interested in anything relating to what could have been in Shadow of War or future games, you should go check out my 8 things that would have made Shadow of War better video, as a lot of those concepts could rightfully apply to a third game rather than a superior Shadow of War. Before the end of this video, I do have a Fortnite supporter creator code, so if you play Fortnite and you're grabbing anything from the Fortnite item shop, consider using code WreckingBallBlue to support me. With that, you've come to the end of this video. So if you have enjoyed, consider hitting the like button down below because it tells me that you like the video. And if you like what I do and you want more of it, consider subscribing for more. And if you'd like to know whenever I upload, whether it's Shadow of War, Space Marine 2, or anything else, you can ring that little bell to get notified whenever I do so. With that, I will see you all next time.